Good morning, dear students. Welcome to Diksha Online. So, we'll be discussing some questions on surface chemistry, metallurgy, and D and F block elements. So, I'll take example 1. Which of the following is not correct? So, cassiterite, chromite, and hematite are concentrated by hydraulic washing. Pure aluminum oxide is obtained by bauxite through leaching process. Sulfide ores are concentrated by calcination method, and roasting can convert sulfide ore into oxide ore. So we will see one by one options. So cassiterite, chromite and hematite, all these are oxide ores which are concentrated by gravity separation or called as hydraulic washing. Then alumina is obtained by bauxite. Bauxite is a ore of aluminum containing Al2O3, which is purified, concentrated by chemical method, that is leaching process. So this is also correct. Even the first one is also correct. Sulfide ores are concentrated by calcination method. So sulfide ores, in order to convert them into oxide ores, we need to subject them for roasting. So calcination is the process of heating the ore in the absence of air below the melting point of the ore. But in case of roasting, we heat the ore in the presence of excess of air. So during this process, the sulfide ores can convert into oxide ores, and oxide ores can be subjected for reduction. So sulfide ores are generally, after concentration, we subject them to roasting, not to calcination. So this C option is incorrect. And roasting can convert sulfide ore to oxide ore. So metallic sulfide react with oxygen to form its oxide compound. So A, B, D are correct. C is the incorrect one. So answer should be C. Okay. We go to the next example. Which of the following represents calcination reaction? So just now we discussed calcination is a process where we heat the ore in the absence of air. So during calcination, generally carbonate ores are decomposed to oxide ores, and the moisture content will be lost. All volatile impurities are also lost. The ore become more and more porous. So in this option, if I take HGS plus O2 gives Hg and SO2, it is a reduction process. So it is not happening in calcination. AgNO3 NaCl gives AgCl and NaNO3. It is a double decomposition reaction, precipitation reaction. So it cannot happen in calcination. And you can see here copper carbonate is decomposing to copper oxide along with loss of carbon dioxide and water. So this is the one which can happen in calcination. The fourth one also will go through it. Al2O3 plus NaOH giving NaLO2 and H2O. This happens in leaching process of concentration of bauxite. So option C is the one which is happening in calcination reaction. So answer should be C. Okay, we'll go to the next question. Example 3. When ZNS and PBS minerals are present together, we use NaCN is added to separate them in Froth flotation process. What is the reason? So we'll see what is the concept involved in this. So when I take zinc sulfide and PBS, when we add NaCN, the zinc sulfide ore particle will combine with NaCN to form a complex. So Na2 Zn CN4. So zinc cyano complex is formed. So the zinc sulfide particles are completely getting complex, so they won't come in the froth. In the froth flotation process, so zinc and lead sulfides are taken, the galena ore, So lead sulfide will come in froth, but zinc sulfide particles are there in the solution in the form of the complex. Because of this complexation, we can separate the zinc sulfide particles and lead sulfide particles during froth flotation process, and such type of compounds are called as depressant. So in separation of zinc sulfide and PBS, NaCN is used as a depressant. So we'll go to the options now. So you can see the options. PbCN twice is precipitated while no effect on ZNS, which is wrong. Zinc sulfide forms a soluble complex of Na2ZnCN4 is right. PBS forming complex same type, which is wrong, and they cannot be separated by using NaCN is also wrong. So it clearly says answer should be B. Next question. Example 4. Which of the following is not correct with respect to leaching? The ore should be soluble in a suitable solvent. So that is not a necessary condition. So we are going to extract the ore particle into a different type of compound by reacting with a suitable chemical reagent. If I take bauxite ore being concentrated, Al2O3 is not exactly soluble in water. But in aqueous medium, we add NaOH to convert the Al2O3 particle into water soluble component of NaAlO2. So ore need not be a component which should be soluble in the solvent. So option A is not a necessary condition. It is done for low grade ores. It is usually done for the ores with a higher concentration of the metallic compound, not done for low grade ores. This is also wrong. And ores, this is also not a necessary condition. And leaching of Al2O3 from bauxite is based on amphoteric nature. So Al2O3 reacts with NaOH. Al2O3 reacts with NaOH to form NaAlO2. So it is a reaction due to basic nature of the oxides, not for the amphoteric. We are not using acid here. It is not due to basic nature. So option obviously should be none of the above statements. So answer should be D. So you can see clearly answer is D. Question number 5. Which of the following is incorrect statement? Calamine and siderite are sulfide ores, argentite and cuprite are oxides, zinc blende and iron pyrites are sulfides, malachite and auxerite are ores of copper. We'll see one by one what exactly they are. So calamine and siderite. Calamine is zinc carbonate and siderite is FeCO3. So both are carbonate source. So calamine and siderite are carbonate ores. Then argentite and cuprite. So argentite is Ag2S and cuprite is Cu2O. So one is sulfide, other one is oxides. Then zinc blende. Zinc blende is ZnS and iron pyrites also sulfide ores. So chalcopyrites, iron pyrites are sulfide ores. Then finally malachite and auxerite. So both are basically having basic copper carbonate. So it is having CuOH twice and CuCO3. So calamine and siderite are carbonate ores, argentite and cuprite are not same type of ores, Ag2S and Cu2O. Zinc blende iron pyrites are sulfides and malachite and auxerite are copper ores. We'll go to the options now. So we see the options. Calamine etc. is given sulfide ores. This is also incorrect. This also incorrect. This is correct. and malacytosate cores of copper. So answer should be both A and B. Answer should be both A and B. Example 6. Which of the following statement is false? During roasting, the moisture is removed from the ore. So roasting also we heat below the melting point of the ore. Definitely whatever heating is done, it will remove the moisture content. The ore becomes free from almost all organic impurities. So due to the heating, organic impurities are more volatile, so they can get removed. Calcination is carried out in the absence of any blast of air. So calcination is always carried out in absence of air. That is also right. And D option, the concentrated zinc ore is subjected to calcination during extraction by pyrometallurgy. So a pyrometallurgy is applicable for zinc sulfide ores. So there we subject the zinc sulfide concentrated ore to roasting, not for calcination. So this would be false. So answer should be D. Okay. Question 7. Which of the following is correct with respect to the following graph? So it is based on Ellingham diagrams. So we can see clearly two graphs are given with respect to MgO and SiO2. So delta G and temperature. So we can see clearly the point of intersection of the two curves is going to be at 1500 degrees Celsius. So if I take below 1500 degrees Celsius, the curve for magnesium is having more negative value. It is delta G negative, 0 is somewhere here on top. So this is in the negative range. So delta G is more negative for magnesium oxide formation compared to silicon dioxide formation. But after 1500 degree, silicon dioxide will have low delta G, more negative delta G compared to MgO. So concept of Ellingham diagram is the one which is below can act as a reducing agent for the one which is present above it. As a result, below 1500 degrees Celsius, magnesium can act as a reducing agent for silicon dioxide. So if I go through that concept, so if I use SiO2, magnesium plus SiO2 gives MgO plus Si. If I take this reaction to be feasible, the delta G for the reaction should be negative. Now what is given below 1500 degrees Celsius? So delta G for magnesium oxide is more negative. So what happens to delta G of the reaction? So delta G is delta G of MgO minus delta G of SiO2. So elements are going to be taken to be 0. So this will be more negative. As a result, the reaction become feasible. So below 1500 degree, magnesium can act as a reducing agent for SiO2. But above 1500 degree, the opposite will happen. So opposite is silicon plus MgO gives SiO2 plus Mg. So this is above 1500 degrees Celsius. Delta G of SiO2 is more negative. Hence, this reaction delta G is also going to be negative. So below 1500, magnesium is good reducing agent. Above 1500 degrees Celsius, silicon becomes a good reducing agent. So we'll see the options now. So option is at less than 1500 degrees Celsius, Mg act as a reducing agent for SiO2. At more than 1500 degrees Celsius, silicon act as a reducing agent for MgO. So both A and B are correct. So answer should be C. Example 8. This is also based on Elingham diagrams. So you can clearly see the 0 is given above, that means delta G is in the negative range. And the point of intersection is 1800 degrees Celsius. And they're asking for the delta G for the overall reaction is 0 at what temperature? The reaction is MO plus C gives M plus CO. So we'll see the solution for this. This is the graph given in the question. So if I take the equation M plus MO metallic oxide plus C gives M plus CO. So it is going to be metal. M is standing for metal. So or Mg or M, whatever is given. I think M is given, not Mg. So M is becoming MO. Okay. Now delta G for the reaction is delta G of MCO minus delta G of MO. So if I say the delta G is 0 for the overall reaction, so if it is 0, then delta G of CO should be equal to delta G of MO. So that is possible only at 1800 degrees Celsius. This is a point of intersection where you have same delta G values for both the oxide formation. As a result, it is only at 1800 degrees Celsius. So answer should be A. Example 9. What is the incorrect statement about the graph? Again, there is a graph given and the options are T1 and T2 are melting and boiling points of Mg, T1 and T2 are melting points of MgO, reduction of MgO by coke is possible about T3 and Mg can be extracted from gaseous product by rapid cooling. So if you see the graph here, we can see two peak changing. So this is a T1 and this is a T2, there is a sharp change in delta G value. If you go with the equation, so delta G is equal to delta H minus T delta S. So the formation is, the reaction is M plus O2 gives MO. All of us know metallic oxides are generally solids and O2 is oxygen is a gas. M can change over its physical state. So if I take delta S for this reaction is nothing but S delta S of MO minus delta S of M and minus delta S O2. So the delta S of M, when there is a phase change, delta S of M, entropy change of metal, when the substance changes from solid to liquid, the delta S is more positive. If delta is more positive, so the actual value, because it is minus, delta S of the reaction becomes more and more negative, and since it is T delta S is negative quantity, so delta G become increasingly more and more positive, or if it is more negative, it becomes less negative. So as a result, when the metal changes from solid to liquid or liquid to gas, there is a sharp jump in the delta G value towards the positive range. As a result, the T1 and T2 represents the boiling and melting point of the metal, but not the boiling point and melting point of the metal oxide. Okay, so we'll see the other solution, other options. So you can see very clearly T1 and T2 are melting and boiling points of magnesium respectively, which is correct statement, and T1 and T2 are melting points of the boiling points of MgO, which is wrong. And even you can see third one, reduction of MgO by coke is possible about T3. If I take T3, the curve of carbon below and magnesium is above. So definitely carbon can act as a reducing agent at a temperature above T3, which is a correct statement. Since magnesium can be extracted from gaseous products by rapid cooling, it comes back to its liquid or the solidified state. So it can be extracted easily by gaseous phase by rapid cooling. So answer should be B, which is the wrong statement. Example 10. Again, based on Ellingham diagrams, if the metallic zinc is collected in the vapor form by carbon reduction process, the correct diagram would be. So same previous to the same question, same question type question here. Uh, you can see in the first graph, zinc curve is having only one peak chain. That means zinc metal has converted to liquid and the reduction is happening in the liquid phase. So you cannot collect the zinc in the vapor phase. So in option B, there is a straight line graph. It's not clear. It's still zinc is in the solid state. So in the solid state only it is getting reduced. So zinc you are getting in the solid state, not in the vapor form. In option C, you can see there are two peaks, one here, one here. So zinc has crossed its uh, boiling point. Zinc is getting formed in a temperature zone where it is vapor. When you cool, it comes back to liquid and then becomes solid. So option C graph is correct for the given situation. So answer should be C. Example 11. Which of the following reactions occur during smelting in the reduction zone at a lower temperature in iron metallurgy? So lower temperature, not the usual reduction. So calcium oxide combining with silicon dioxide to form slag. This is not in the reduction zone. So this is not the answer. Fe2O3 carbon and becoming Fe and CO in iron metallurgy, carbon will not act as a reducing agent. Carbon monoxide is a reducing agent. So this is also wrong. And in Fe2O3CO, a small portion can be converted even into Fe3O4 because it's given at a lower temperature range. So normal temperature range of 600 to 700 degrees Celsius, the spongy iron will be formed. So Fe2O3 plus CO can reduce to Fe3O4 with the liberation of CO2. This is a possible reaction in that low temperature zone in the reduction zone itself. Carbon dioxide plus carbon giving rise to carbon monoxide happens at a much higher temperature. Okay, so option should be C. You can see option C is the answer. Example 12. NaCl and CaCl2 are added to fused magnesium chloride in the electrolysis of magnesium chloride because the options are like melting point and conductivity. So we're adding NaCl and CaCl2 to fused MgCl2 so that the conductivity is increased and melting point of the electrolyte is decreased. With that purpose, we are adding these two components. In electrolytic refining, in electrolytic extraction, the conductivity should be more and the melting point should be less so that it can be easily melted, and conductivity we can extract the metal at the cathode. So melting point decreased and conductivity increased is the correct combination. So answer should be A. Example 13. In the cyanide process of extraction of gold and silver from ores, the cyanide solution act as. So what will happen in case of the cyanide extraction process? We'll go to solution. In this process, the gold or silver present is added with NaCN to convert this into water soluble complexes like NaAuCN twice. Same way, silver present in the ore can convert into water soluble silver complexes, cyanide complex of silver and gold. So this is how the metal present in the ore is getting into aqueous solution in the form of the complexes. Then this complex is heated with zinc to re-liberate gold or silver. So the role of NaCN is to convert the gold and silver present in the ore to the respective cyano complexes. So we'll go to the options. So option A says reducing agent to reduce gold and silver compounds present in the ore. There is no reduction. Gold and silver exist as native ores. exist as a metal itself. Leaching agent to bring gold and silver ore to cyanocomplexes and separate the metals from the ore. So this is the role of NaCN, which is converting the gold and silver into respective cyanocomplexes. And option C, if you take leaching agent to dissolve all other constituents and leaving gold and silver as metals. So say gold and silver will not be left as metals, and leaching agent to bring ores into solution, that is also incorrect. So option B should be the right answer. Okay. So question number 14. Formation of volatile nickel tetracarbonyl, then subsequent decomposition into nickel and carbon makes the basis of Bond's process. So it's vapor phase refining process in which the nickel metal is clubbed with reacted with carbon monoxide to form a metal nickel carbonyl, nickel tetracarbonyl, which can be separated, and then it is further decomposed to get nickel and carbon monoxide. So the temperatures for these two steps. So it's a factual question. The first one is a relatively lower temperature. To break the complex, you require higher temperature. So option should be, this is a factual thing, it's 50 degree and 200 degree Celsius. So answer should be C. Question number 15. Blister copper is refined by stirring the molten impure copper by logs of green wood. This is due to liberation of a hydrocarbon by the wood, and that hydrocarbon can reduce the metal oxide impurity back to metal. So this method is called as poling, and poling is used for metals containing its own oxide as an impurity. So in that case, the molten metal is stirred with green logs of wood, which produce a respective hydrocarbon, and hydrocarbon reduces the metallic oxide back to metal. So answer should be poling, and the oxide impurity for copper is cuprous oxide, that is Cu2O. So answer should be B. So you can see the solution, the answer key, it's going to be B. So it's called as poling, and impurity is cuprous oxide. Example 16. Moving to D and F block, the set of compounds which do not exist. So you have Hg, Ag, V and FeCl3, COI2. So if you see carefully the options, PbI4. In PbI4, Pb is in +4 state. So for inert pair effect, it's actually P block element. So inert pair effect will come into picture. Pb +2 is more stable than +4. PbI4 has no existence. And BiCl5, same way bismuth can show +3 as a more stable oxidation state, +5 is not stable for bismuth, BiCl5 has no existence. pH3 can exist, pH5 cannot exist. So all the three compounds in option A is not existing. So answer should be A. Question number 17. Which of the following compounds do not have unpaired electrons but show color? So we need to know a concept for color nature. Color nature is going to be one of the unique property of transition metal compounds. So the color nature is due to mainly internal D to D electron transition. So this is required only, this is going to happen only when there are unpaired electrons in the transition metal atom or ion. But in case of certain compounds like KMnO4, Mn is in +7 state, K2Cr2O7, K2Cr O4, these compounds show color but not exactly due to unpaired electron. So Cr is in +6 state, Mn is in +7 state, highest oxidation states, there are no unpaired electrons in these metals. As a result, the color nature is due to a concept called as charge transfer. So due to charge transfer process, the color nature is observed. So answer should be KMnO4, Rk2Cr2O7, or K2Cr04. So we'll see the options. So you can see MnSO4 is in Mn plus 2 state. So this is Mn plus 2 having 5 unpaired electron. This is also Mn plus 2. This is Mn plus 6. There is one unpaired electron. This is Mn plus 7. There is no unpaired electron. Answer should be C. Example 18. Which KMnO4 is, sorry, when it is actually not which, when KMnO4 is added to oxalic acid solution, the decolorization is slow in the beginning but becomes instantaneous after some time. This is due to, so this is a best example for autocatalytic process. So the formed product during the reaction Mn2 plus will act as a catalyst for the same reaction. So the generation of catalyst going to happen as and when the reaction proceeds. So the reaction become more and more faster with time. So Mn2 plus ion acting as a catalyst for the same reaction. So this is the best example for what is called as autocatalysis. So answer should be A. Example 19. Which of the following is associated with lanthanide contraction? This is also a conceptual question. So lanthanide contraction is nothing but the gradual decrease of the atomic sizes of the atoms as well as the ions from lanthanum to lutetium. This is due to ineffective shielding of f orbitals. So because of this reason, the 4D and 5D elements, zirconium and hafnium, are having almost same size. The properties are also going to be more similar. So size of zirconium is almost equal to hafnium is one of the consequence. Shielding of 4f electron is less than that of 3d electron. The reason for lanthanide contraction is that only ineffective shielding of f electron. That is why nuclear charge predominates and the size goes on decreasing. So this is also a lanthanide contraction concept. Similar physical and chemical properties of Nb and Ta, that is also due to lanthanide contraction. So all of the above is the answer. Option D. Example 20. Which of the following statement is or incorrect? So stability of copper 2 plus ion in aqueous medium is always greater compared to Cu plus. So that is due to mainly hydration. Though the ionization energy is more for Cu2 plus, definitely hydration energy of Cu2 plus ion is stabilizing. That is why the Cu plus can disproportionate to Cu and Cu2 plus. So Cu plus is not stable compared to Cu2 plus. Option A is a correct statement. Cu2 plus aqueous is more stable because IE2 of Cu is less than IE1. For any element, IE2 cannot be less than IE1. So it is impossible. This is a wrong statement. Generally, salts of copper 2 plus ion are diamagnetic and colorless. Cu2 plus will have D9 configuration. There is one unpaired electron present in it. They will be blue colored solutions, and the paramagnetic behavior is observed. So this is also wrong statement. And standard reduction potential of copper 2 plus to copper reduction potential with respect to SHE is always positive. It is going to be plus 0.34 volts. So this is also wrong. They are asking for incorrect. So answer should be B, C and D. B, C, D. Example 21. Catalytic activity of transition metals and their compounds can be ascribed to. So catalytic activity of transition compounds mainly due to their ability to show variable oxidation state so that they can take part in intermediate compound formation. So they are going to be changing over to another compound, then they will be regenerated at the end of the reaction. And also they exist as a very good heterogeneous catalysis because of their ability to give large surface area for adsorption. And the ability of the transition metals to get converted into various complexes during the course of the reaction, and that is why they can act as good catalyst. So, a catalytic adsorption by utilization of even 3d and 4s electrons for bonding. So, here all four statements are actually right. So, their ability to adopt multiple oxidation state, their ability to form complexes, and their ability to provide large surface area for adsorption, and the adsorption is by using both 3d and 4s electrons with the gas molecules coming as reactants. So, answer should be A, B, C, D. Question number 22. Pick out the correct statement from the following. MnO4 2- is quite strong oxidizing agent and stable only in very strong alkali. In dilute alkali, it can undergo disproportionation to give Mn2 plus and MnO4 minus. So, it is plus 6, it can go to plus 7, it can go to even plus 2. So, this is a correct statement. In acidic solution, MnO4 changes to Mn2 plus, that is very correct, and KMnO4 is widely used as an oxidizing agent because of this changeover. So, plus 7 to plus 2 is a change in the oxidation number for manganese in acid medium. So, this is also a correct statement. Both A and B are right. So, we will go to C and D. KMnO4 does not act as oxidizing agent in alkaline medium. It is very wrong because KMnO4 actually exists as a very strong oxidizing agent in alkaline medium. And KMnO4 is manufactured by fusion of pyrolusite ore with KOH followed by electrolytic oxidation in alkaline medium. This is a method of manufacturing KMnO4 by pyrolusite ore, which is a correct statement. So, except C, all the other three are right. So, answer should be A, B and D. Question number 23. Select the correct statement from the following. Successive ionization enthalpies of transition elements do not increase as steeply as main group element. This is correct because in transition element the electrons entering into inner d orbital, not to the outermost shell, and also compared to S and P electrons, the d electrons are unable to shield properly. Because of the less shielding relative to S and P electron, the atomic size is going to decrease initially, then shielding effect increases gradually from left to right in the period. So, initially there is a decrease in the atomic size, then that is because of the increase in the nuclear charge, then towards the end you go, the more number of d electrons are involved. So, the increase in the nuclear charge is going to be less dominant compared to increase in the shielding effect. As a result, the size will go on increasing. If I go for successive ionization enthalpies of transition elements, so main element IE1, IE2, if you take, there is a big difference relatively, and in case of transition element, difference between IE1 IE2 is going to be relatively less because electrons are removed not from the 3D, it is removed from 4s. Then magnitude increase in second and third ionization energy. The difference between the second IE and third IE will be relatively higher because second IE means all S electrons are removed. So, the nuclear charge is more and the electrons are removed from D subshell. So, the difference in the energy, the most common oxidation number of transition metal is +2. So, +2 to +3, there is a bigger difference in terms of ionization energy because of the S orbital is being completely removed. The lowest common oxidation state of all the transition element is +2. So, 4s1 except copper and chromium in that particular 3D series, all other elements commonly shows +2 oxidation state. That is also correct. The second ionization energy of copper and chromium is usually high because copper and chromium, after removal of the first electron, they attain D5 and D10 configuration, and as a result of that the ionization potential is relatively high. So, all the four statements here also right. So answer should be A, B, C, D. Example 24. What is the correct order of ionic radii? This is a direct question based on lanthanide contraction. You need to know the position of lanthanides in the respective period. So if you see lanthanum, lutetium is at the end of the series. So lutetium should have least. So I have only one option here. Lutetium is in the least. So lutetium 3 plus, EU 3 plus and lanthanum comes last, and yttrium is not in the lanthanides, it's above lanthanum in the D group itself. As a result, C is the right answer. So across the period from lanthanum to lutetium, there is a continuous decrease in the atomic and ionic size. So answer should be C. Example 25. Which of the following is not correct? So as a consequence of lanthanide contraction, the size of lanthanides goes on decreasing from lanthanum to lutetium. So as the size goes on decreasing, the covalent character of the uh, compound increases. So basic nature of hydroxides of lanthanides decreases from left to right. So the first statement says lanthanum hydroxide is less basic than lutetium hydroxide. It should be other way around. Lutetium hydroxide should be less basic than lanthanum hydroxide. So this is not correct. Second one, in lanthanide series, ionic radii of Ln3 plus ion decreases. That is lanthanide contraction. That is correct statement. Atomic size of zirconium hafnium same due to lanthanide contraction. That is also correct. And lanthanum is an element in the transition series rather than lanthanide series. So it's called, series is called as lanthanide, but lanthanum is not exactly a member of F block element. The outermost configuration is D1 for it. So it will be there in the transition metal series. So B, C, D are right. A is incorrect. So answer should be A. Example 26. The large number of oxidized states are exhibited by actinides than those of lanthanides. So that is mainly due to oxidation state. Variable oxidation state is a property of transition elements and also F block elements. That is mainly due to a narrow energy difference between the outermost electron and the inner D and F subshells. So 4f orbitals are more diffused than 5f, which is not making sense. Lesser energy difference between 5f and 6d than between 4f and 5d. So in case of transition elements, uh, in lanthanides will be 4f and 5d and actinides will be 5f and 6d. So the energy difference between 5f and 6d is relatively less. That's why they can lose more number of electron from 5f as well. That's why they show more number of oxidation state than lanthanides. Option B is the reason for the given question. So we'll go to C and D also. C says more energy difference between 5f and 6d than between and 4f. So if it is more energy difference, then the loss of electron from 5f is difficult. And more reactive nature of actinides and lanthanides, that is not a valid reason. So option B is the right answer. Example 27. This is based on surface chemistry, that is based on adsorption. So volume of nitrogen at 1 atmosphere and 273 Kelvin required to form a mono layer on the surface of iron is 8.15 ml per gram of the adsorbent. What will be the surface area of the adsorbent per gram of nitrogen molecules requires? Okay, so 1 minute. What will be the surface area of the adsorbent per gram if the nitrogen molecule require this much of area? One molecule of nitrogen requires 16 into 10 power 22 minus 22 meter square area. So how many, what will be the surface area covered per gram of the adsorbent? That we have to find out. So we'll go through the solution for this. So the volume given is 8.15 ml So 8.15 ml of nitrogen, if I convert into number of moles. So 8.15 divided by 22,400 cc. If I take this, I get this as 3.6 10 power minus 4 moles. And if I multiply this by Avogadro number, I'll take Avogadro number as 6 into 10 power 23, 10 power minus 4 into 6 into 10 power 23. So this comes to be 2.16 into 10 power 20 molecules. This many molecules have been adsorbed on 1 gram of uh, the adsorbent. Now, each molecule having the area is 16 into 10 power minus 22. So, total area covered now. This will be equal to, so area covered 2.16 10 power 20 molecules, each of them occupying 16 into 10 power minus 22 meter square. So, what is the value? I get this as 0.345 meter square approximately. So, in the given options we have 0.35 as an answer. So, 0.35 meter square. So, I will go to the options. So, it is going to be option B. Okay. So, question number 28. Question number 28. Softening of hard water done using sodium aluminum silicate. This causes, so sodium aluminum silicate is nothing but zeolite. So there will be exchange of calcium and magnesium ions of the hard water, and instead of calcium and magnesium the column will give sodium ions. So aluminum ions will not be given, sodium ion is the ion which is replaced. Answer should be a absorption of calcium and magnesium ions of hard water replacing with sodium ion, which doesn't cause any hardness. So we don't have to go for the other option. B is not a possible answer. A is the only answer. So answer is A. Example 29. The pressure of the gas was found to decrease from 720 mm to 480 mm when 5 gram of sample of activated charcoal was kept in a flask of 1 liter capacity at 300 Kelvin. The density of charcoal is 1.25 gram per cc. The volume of gas adsorbed per gram of the charcoal at 480 millimeters of mercury is. Okay, so we'll go through the solution of this. The decrease in pressure is due to adsorption of the number of moles of gas on charcoal. So I'll take the number of moles of gas adsorbed. So N is equal to delta P into V by RT. So delta P is 720 minus 480 by 760 in terms of atmosphere into V is 1 liter and R is 0.0821 into 300. So if I simplify this, N is equal to, I will not simplify everything, I will take only the numerator. It is 240 by 760 into 1 divided by 0.0821 into 300. This is the number of moles of gas adsorbed on 5 grams of charcoal. So they're asking for the volume of the gas adsorbed per gram of the charcoal. So if I want to find out the volume of the gas adsorbed, this is the number of moles. I have to find out the volume occupied by this many moles at a pressure of 480 millimeters of mercury, again 300 Kelvin. So if I take volume, V is equal to nRT by P. So N is nothing but this value. So 240 by 760 whole divided by 0.0821 into 300. This is N. R is again 0.0821 into 300 by P is again 760. 240 by 760 is already atmosphere, so it is going to be 1. So I can cancel this clearly. This also I can clearly cancel out. So 240 by 760. Okay, so pressure is actually at 480 mm, so it should be 480 by 760. So I can cancel 760 and 760. So I'll get basically V as V is equal to 240 by 480. So which is nothing but 1 by 2, that is in liter, so 500 ml. So 500 ml for 5 grams. So for 1 gram, it's going to be 100 ml. So 500 ml for 5 grams. So for 1 gram, it's going to be 100 ml. So answer should be 100 ml. So we'll go to the solution part or option part. So you can see the closest one is 100.61. The answer is D. Question number 30. In Langmuir adsorption isotherm, the gas on a solid surface. So the Langmuir adsorption isotherm for gases being adsorbed on solid surface, which of them is correct? The rate of dissociation or desorption of adsorbed molecule from the surface is not dependent on the surface covered. So how many molecules are getting dissolved is not dependent on the number of molecules which are already adsorbed. So which is a correct statement. It does not depend. The adsorption at single site on the surface may involve multiple molecules at the same time. So Langmuir adsorption isotherm is specifically used to explain the chemisorption. So multimolecular layer is not going to be happening in Langmuir adsorption isotherm. This is not a correct statement. C and D. The mass of the striking gas, the gas which is coming and hitting the surface, that the striking gas in the given area. So in the given area, how much gas molecules are coming and striking depends on the pressure of the gas. So that means adsorption, the rate at which adsorption happens depends on the pressure of the gas, which is a correct statement. And the mass of the striking gas at a given area of surface is independent of pressure of the gas. So pressure of the gas will matter for how much of gas molecule coming and absorbing on the surface. So C is correct, but D is opposite of C, it is not correct. So answer should be A and C. So answer given as C, it should be A and C. Example 30, which the following is correct? So enthalpy of physisorption is greater than that of chemisorption. So enthalpy of physisorption, that is in terms of magnitude, not with a negative sign. So amount of heat liberated in physisorption is always less compared to chemisorption. So option 1 is wrong. Physisorption is not very specific, but chemisorption is highly specific. In case of physisorption, any gas can be adsorbed onto a particular solid, not very specific, but chemisorption is highly specific. Only a particular gas can be adsorbed on a particular solid. This is a correct statement. Chemisorption takes place at relatively higher temperature. Very correct, because the chemical bond formation favors at relatively higher temperature than van der Waals forces. So chemisorption with temperature initially shows an increase, reaches a maximum and then decreases. So chemisorption compared to physisorption, the temperature will be higher. That is also correct statements. In physisorption, generally multimolecular layers are formed because it is only van der Waals force of attraction. We can expect multimolecular layers in physisorption but not in chemisorption. So option D is also right. So answer should be B, C and D. Example 31. Which of the following is true? The concentration of homogeneous catalyst may appear in the rate expression. In case of homogeneous catalysis, it is going through intermediate compound formation. Now, if I take a reactant reacting with the catalyst to form an intermediate compound, if that is a rate determining step, then in the rate expression we can get even concentration of the catalyst. So, especially if I take hydrolysis of an ester, there the concentration of H plus is also going to matter for the reaction rate. If you carry out the hydrolysis in 1 molar HCl, 2 molar HCl, 0.5 molar HCl, at the same temperature, same concentration of the ester, the reaction is going to have different rates. So, it depends upon the concentration of the catalyst also. So, this is a correct statement. It may appear. The catalyst is always consumed in a reaction, which is wrong. A catalyst must always be in the same phase as the reactant. So, we need not have the same phase, it can be heterogeneous. C is also definitely wrong. None of these also definitely wrong. Option A is the answer. Example 32. Which of the following is correct with respect to enzyme? So, enzyme catalysis are highly specific, they are highly active as catalyst, and they work on homogeneous catalysis principle, and they catalyze the reaction up to 10 power 6 to 10 power 8 times. So, these are highly specific catalysts which functions at high temperature, 1000 Kelvin. This is impossible. So, temperature has to be optimum temperature, that is around 37 degrees Celsius. Most of the enzymes are active around that particular 310 to 320 Kelvin. So, this is wrong. Enzymes are normally homogeneous catalysis, which is correct. Enzymes are specific biological catalysts which cannot be poisoned. They are very specific biological catalyst, but presence of other compounds may affect the activity of the catalyst. So, it is not 100% right statement. Enzymes are non-biodegradable. All of them are biodegradable. They can break down completely and they are not biodegradable. So, it is also wrong. So, answer B is the right answer. Option B is the right answer. Example 33. Introduction of 2 drops of concentrated sulfuric acid speeds up the esterification reaction. Same way, introduction of small piece of platinum metal speeds up the reaction between hydrogen and oxygen. Which of the following is correct? Simple question. Sulfuric acid is in the same phase as that of the reactants. So, sulfuric acid should be homogeneous. Platinum is solid, hydrogen, oxygen are gases, that should be heterogeneous. So, option B is the right answer. H2SO4 is homogeneous and PT is heterogeneous catalyst. Example 34. Which of the following is lyophobic sol? Lyophobic sol. So, egg albumin, we know it is lyophilic. Arsenic sulfide is lyophobic with negative charge. Even ferric hydroxide is also lyophobic with positive charge. Gold salt is also lyophobic with negative charge. So, the negative charge, positive charge salts are going to be normally lyophobic because of the absorption of the ion from the solution. They get the charge. Charge is the only reason for their stability. Lyophilic salts may not have charge or may have charge, but they are going to be very highly stable. So, egg albumin is lyophilic, all the other three are lyophobic. Factual question. So, answer should be B, C, D. Example 34. Which of the following statement is correct with respect to hydrophilic salt? So, in hydrophilic salt or lyophilic salt, they do not require electrolytes for its stability. So, no question of the charge accumulation. So, due to their interaction with the medium, they are going to be highly stable. So, option A is correct. The viscosity is of the order of the same as that of water. So, generally viscosity is higher than the dispersion medium and surface tension is lower than the dispersion medium. So this is wrong, and surface tension is usually lower. That's also correct. They can be prepared by direct mixing of disperse phase and dispersion medium. That is also correct. So answer should be A, C, D. Example 35. A reddish brown sol containing Fe3 plus ion is obtained by, that is ferric hydroxide sol. So ferric hydroxide precipitate is added to a dilute solution of ferric chloride. Then ferric hydroxide particle absorb the ferric ion from solution to become positively charged colloidal particles. So addition of FeOH thrice to a freshly prepared FeCl3 solution. This is the correct one. The addition of NH4OH to FeCl3 will form ferric hydroxide as a precipitate. There is no excess dilute FeCl3 so that it can form the sol. NaOH FeCl3 also will give ferric hydroxide precipitation. The addition of small amount of FeCl3 to freshly prepared FeOH thrice precipitate will not make the colloidal particle because the small amount of FeCl3 is not enough to give charge for all the particles. So it should be the precipitate is added to a dilute solution containing Fe3 plus ions. Option A is the right way to prepare the ferric hydroxide salt through peptization. So answer given is wrong here. It should be A. Adding FeOH thrice precipitate to FeCl3 solution. It is slightly confusing in the first option also. Freshly prepared FeOH thrice should be taken added to FeCl3 solution. Even the last one also says small amount of FeCl3 is not sufficient. FeOH thrice particle should get that particular charge. So possible A is not having freshly prepared FeOH thrice, it is given a freshly prepared FeCl3 solution. So if I add a small amount of FeCl3 solution, that is dilute solution, to freshly prepared FeOH thrice, so I think D can be the justifiable answer. Okay, so not A, it should be D only. Example 36. For the coagulation of 200 ml of AS2S3 solution, that is sol actually, not solution, 10 ml of 1 molar NaCl was required. What is the coagulation value? So if I go through this, coagulation value is the number of millimoles of the electrolyte required to coagulate 1 liter of the sol. So we have given 200 ml. Okay, so 200 ml requires 10 ml of 1 molar NaCl. So 1000 ml requires how much? So 1000 into 10 by 200. So this is 5 and 50 ml. So what is the number of millimoles? 50 into 1, so 50 millimoles. So this is the number of millimoles required for 1 liter. So that is the coagulation value or flocculation value. So option should be D. Example 37. In the disperse phase of iron 3 hydroxide sol and colloidal gold are positively and negatively charged respectively. So iron hydroxide sol is positively charged sol and gold sol is negatively charged sol. Which the following is correct. So coagulation in both sols can be brought about by electrophoresis. So when you do electrophoresis, the colloidal particles start moving towards the oppositely charged electrodes. Near the electrodes, they lose their charges and they get coagulated. So it is correct statement. A is fine. Mixing of sol has no effect. So if I mix a positively charged sol and a negatively charged sol, they can mutually cancel out the charges and they start forming aggregation and both can get coagulated. So mixing will have an effect, which is wrong. Sodium sulfate can cause coagulation of both salts. So, sodium sulfate will have Na2 plus and SO4 2 minus. So, Na2 plus can coagulate the gold salt, SO4 2 minus can coagulate the iron hydroxide salt. So, this is also correct. And MgCl2 coagulates gold salt more readily than ferric hydroxide salt. So, MgCl2 has Mg2 plus, which is having higher charge, and Cl minus is having one charge. So, Cl minus is less effective in coagulation compared to Mg2 plus. So, Mg2 plus coagulates gold salt, which is negative, more effectively than Cl minus ion. So, this is also a correct statement. So, answer should be A, C and D. So, answer should be A, C and D. Example 38. The gold numbers of three protective colloids are given. So, zero point 0.5, 0.01, 0.055. What is the order of correct protective power? So, very important, the protective power is inversely proportional to gold number. So, gold number is high, protective power is less, gold number is less, protective power is high. So, we have A as 0.5, B as 0.01 and C as 0.055. So, this is the least. So, B should be 1 and C should be second, A should be third. So, it should be B greater than C greater than A, or A less than C less than B. Option C will be matching for this. So, answer should be C. Example 39. Which of the following statement is true? A salt prepared by adding silver nitrate to a solution of Ki. So, excess silver nitrate. So, what happens? So, silver nitrate is in excess. So, AgNO3 plus KCl forms AgCl plus KNO3. Along with that, we have plenty of Ag plus ions in the solution. So, this AgCl particles start absorbing all silver ions on it. So, this will become a positively charged colloid. Okay. So, the first option is going to be positively charged. So, if you take the electrophoresis of that, it should go to cathode. So, it is showing precipitation near cathode. That is the right statement. The conductivity of soap solution reduces at CMC, critical micelle concentration. The soap molecule form association to form the ionic micelle. Number of particles decreases, number of soap ions decreases. The conductivity sharply decreases at CMC. Correct statement. Tyndall effect will be more prominent in gold salt compared to rubber solution. Rubber solution is a lyophilic salt. The colloidal particles are very well mixed with the dispersion medium, unable to scatter effectively compared to gold salt, where the particles are not very associated with solvent. So, the particles can effectively scatter the radiation. So, option C is also correct. Extent of physical adsorption increases with increase in temperature initially and then decreases. This is for chemical adsorption, not for physical adsorption. D is wrong. So, answer should be A, B and C. Question number 40. Among the following, the surfactant that will form micelles in aqueous solution at the lowest concentration. So, the lowest concentration, you have quaternary ammonium salts, you have sulfonate acid, normal soaps, and the last one is actually quaternary ammonium salt with methyl group present. So, the CMC will depend upon the length of the carbon chain. So, length of the carbon chain and also the polar part of the molecule. So, quaternary ammonium salt are having lower concentration for formation of Micelle compared to sodium salts or carboxylic acid or sodium salts of sulfonic acids. So uh, and apart from that, the carbon chain length will also matter. Longer the carbon chain, lower will be the CMC values. So the critical micelle concentration will be lower if the length of the carbon chain is going to be higher. So if you see the options, quaternary ammonium ion is A and D, and in A we have 15, that is 16 carbon in one chain. Here we have 11 carbon plus 1, 12 carbon chain. So A has a higher carbon chain length, and ammonium ion, so that will have higher ability to form micelle, and it is going to require lowest concentration. So answer should be A. Okay, dear students, these are the questions what I thought to discuss with you. So thank you.